It began like any other day in Washington, D.C., until the city realized it was being hunted. April 25th, 1971. A 13-year-old girl named Carol Spinks left her family's apartment in southeast D.C. to buy groceries just a few blocks away. Her mother didn't want her to go alone, but Carol promised to be quick. She never made it home. 6 days later, her body was found near I-295, a desolate stretch of freeway that would soon become synonymous with fear. Her shoes were missing. Her body showed signs of sexual assault and strangulation. But it was only the beginning. Carol was the first known victim of a serial killer who would become known as the Freeway Phantom. Over the next 17 months, 5 more young African-American girls, all between the ages of 10 and 18, would disappear. Each time, the city hoped it was a one-time tragedy. Each time, the bodies were eventually found, discarded like garbage near highways or in secluded areas, always within Washington, D.C. or its close suburbs. And each time, the details grew more disturbing. The second victim, 16-year-old Darlenia Johnson, disappeared on her way to work. Her body was found just 15 feet from where Carol's had been discovered, in an area that police admitted had already been searched. She had likely been there the whole time. This raised chilling questions. Was the killer taunting authorities? Was he watching them as they searched? Brenda Crockett, just 10 years old, went missing on July 27, 1971. Hours later, her family's phone rang. It was Brenda. She was crying. She said a white man had picked her up and that she was in Virginia. Then she said she had to go, that the man was coming back. She called a second time, but the details were off. Her stepfather believed she was being coached. Brenda's body was found the next day, raped and strangled, her shoes missing just like Carol's. By this point, the DC Metro Police realized they had a serial predator on their hands. Someone who was targeting young black girls. Someone smart enough to manipulate, plant evidence, and evade detection. A task force was assembled involving multiple jurisdictions, the FBI and local detectives. But the killer stayed one step ahead. Nenamashia Yates was just 12 years old when she was abducted in October of 1971. Her body was found a few hours later along Pennsylvania Avenue, strangled with a scarf. There were no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, no known suspects. She had been murdered so quickly that law enforcement believed the killer was escalating. The fifth victim, Brenda Woodard, was 18, the oldest yet. She had just left a night class at Cardozo High School. Her body was found near an on-ramp to Route 202. She had been stabbed multiple times and strangled. But what made Brenda's case different was the note. Inside her coat pocket was a handwritten message. This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me if you can. Freeway Phantom. The writing was neat, calculated, and chilling. It was later confirmed that the note was written in Brenda's own handwriting, meaning the killer had forced her to write it before murdering her. This wasn't just about killing. This was about power, domination, and terror. Then the Phantom went quiet. Almost a year passed before the final known victim. Diane Williams, a 17-year-old honors student, was found along I-295. She had been raped and strangled like the others. But unlike the earlier cases, her shoes were not missing, and there was no note. And that was it. 6 girls, 6 brutal murders, and not a single arrest. The Freeway Phantom seemed to vanish as suddenly as he appeared. The task force worked tirelessly. Leads came and went. There were suspects, including members of a notorious local gang known as the Green Vega Rapists. But none were ever definitively linked to the Phantom killings. Some even passed polygraph tests. Others were released due to lack of evidence. One disturbing theory came years later, that the killer had connections to law enforcement. How else could he have known how to plant evidence, avoid detection, and vanish so effectively? Another theory was that the Phantom may have been someone the girls trusted, perhaps a taxi driver, a neighbor, or a local community member who knew their routines and movements. This made it even more terrifying. What if the killer was hiding in plain sight the whole time? For the families of the victims, the pain never faded. Each year they held vigils, marched, pleaded for the case to be reopened or reinvestigated. But time marched on. Evidence degraded, witnesses died, and the city slowly moved past its fear. He was never caught, never named, never brought to justice. The only trace he left behind, aside from the shattered lives of 6 young girls and their families, was a single chilling sentence: "Catch me if you can." It was the winter of 1956, and Chicago was cloaked in a heavy silence. Snow muffled the streets, and even the buzz of neon lights seemed to hum a little lower. But nothing could have prepared the city for the chill that would follow 2 young girls vanishing into the night, never to be seen alive again. Their names were Barbara and Patricia Grimes, and their disappearance remains one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in American history. On December 28, 1956, the Grimes sisters, 15-year-old Barbara and 13-year-old Patricia, left their home in the south side of Chicago. They were headed to the Brighton Theater to watch the Elvis Presley movie Love Me Tender, something they'd done more than once that week. It was the holiday break, and like most teenagers, they were smitten with Elvis and thrilled to be out on their own. They had about $2.50 between them, enough for the movie and snacks. It should have been an ordinary night. They promised their mother they'd be home by midnight, but midnight came and went. Their beds stayed empty. At first, their mother, Loretta Grimes, tried not to panic. Maybe they'd stayed for a second showing. Maybe they got caught up with friends. But as the hours dragged on, dread took over. By the next morning, the girls still hadn't come home. Loretta called the police. What began as a missing person report quickly turned into a full-blown media frenzy. The Grimes sisters' disappearance wasn't just a local tragedy, it captured national attention. Elvis Presley himself made a public plea, urging the girls to return home safely if they had run away. But no one could reach them. It was like they'd vanished into the night. Witnesses came forward with sightings. Some claimed to have seen the girls on a bus. Others swore they saw them walking down different streets around Chicago. A waitress said she saw them eating in a diner downtown. One classmate claimed she spoke to them near the theater just before midnight. But nothing was confirmed. Every lead led to another dead end. 2 weeks turned into 3. Then on January 22, 1957, a construction worker driving along a lonely stretch of German Church Road in Willow Springs, about 20 miles from where the girls were last seen, noticed something strange in the snow-covered ditch. At first, he thought they were mannequins, but they weren't. They were the frozen, nude bodies of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. The scene was chilling. The bodies lay just feet apart. Patricia's body was slightly covered in snow, while Barbara's was more exposed. Their faces were battered, and their bodies showed signs of abuse, but the exact cause of death couldn't be conclusively determined. The autopsy revealed signs of exposure to cold, potential blunt force trauma, and possible sexual assault. But too much time had passed. The evidence was degraded. What really happened in those missing weeks? Who had taken the girls? And why? The police questioned hundreds of people. One suspect, a man named Edward Benny Bedwell, even confessed. He claimed he and a friend picked up the girls, kept them for a week, and then dumped their bodies after things got out of control. But his confession didn't line up with the autopsy report, and he quickly recanted. It was later determined that his confession had been coerced. He was released. Other suspects came and went. A man named Walter Kranz, a self-proclaimed psychic, called the police days after the girls disappeared and accurately described the location where the bodies would be found. That alone should have been enough to raise red flags. But he wasn't charged. Then there was Max Flegel, a local man known for picking up girls in his car. He fit the profile. But again, nothing stuck. The media attention made everything worse. The case became so high profile that real tips were buried under hoaxes and attention seekers. The police were overwhelmed and leads were bungled. Evidence may have been contaminated. The timing of the bodies being found, just after a thaw in the snow, suggested they had been placed there recently. But other evidence indicated they had been there for weeks. No one could agree. Loretta Grimes, the girl's mother, never stopped fighting for answers. She publicly criticized the police, saying they had failed her daughters. She believed the killer was someone in the neighborhood, someone who knew the girls, someone who could blend in. Over the years, theories multiplied. Some believed the girls had been abducted by a trucker or someone passing through town. Others believed it was a local predator who had gone unnoticed. A few even tied it to other missing persons cases in the area, suggesting a serial killer was on the loose. The tragedy of Barbara and Patricia Grimes is more than just an unsolved crime. It's a scar on the city's history. Two young girls went out to watch a movie and never came home. And somewhere out there, their killer may have lived out his life in total freedom.